Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my July wrap up. I read 13 books in July, so it was definitely a very good reading month for me, and I'll have content warnings in the description box down below if that's something you think you might need. But without further ado, let's get right down to the books. So the very first book that I want to talk to you about is my most disappointing read of the month, but I'm just going to get it out of the way first and foremost, and that is Only on the Weekends by Dean Atta. This is a proof copy, and this is what the finished cover looks like. So in my mid-year freak-out tag, I mentioned that an anticipated read that I still need to get to was this one, and this is a novel in verse where we follow our main character. He's a plus-size black gay boy, and he is going to school, living his life, and he has a big crush on this basketball player. But a little while later, he also meets this TikTok star who he starts to have a crush on as well. So we're getting to see lots and lots of representation here, not only fat representation, but also black characters and also trans characters. So it's really nice to see that whole mix. And part of this book takes place in London, which is nice to see kind of the black London experience, but then you also get to see the black Scottish experience. And I don't think I've also seen much about the gay community and being in Scotland and being LGBT+, at least personally. I haven't read it so much myself or come across it much, so it's kind of refreshing and nice to see it in this novel in verse. And I was especially anticipating this one as I loved The Black Flamingo by the same author, but this fell short to me for quite a few reasons. First and foremost, I don't think it's written as well as The Black Flamingo was, unfortunately. In terms of novel in verse writing style, it just missed the mark, and it felt like you've taken prose and you've chopped it up rather than you've made it into something that's poetic, something that flows nicely in verse as well as telling a story. It's a very difficult balance to strike, and I've read quite a bit of it, and this one just missed its mark on that for me and fell into it being an okay writing style to experience. I really struggled with our main character. I wasn't a big fan of him. I think he's quite spoiled throughout this whole thing, and just the choice of his actions, I don't agree with them. I think he does a lot of projecting his emotions onto other people and blaming them instead of thinking about himself, and I really struggle with that in characters. And I know that he develops throughout this book, but I don't think he developed enough for me by the end for me to feel satisfied. This also deals a lot with one of my least favourite things, which is ironic because it's also dealing with something I love, which is a good love triangle. I'm one of those people who's all here for the drama of a love triangle, but then again, one of my least favourite things happened in this, and I don't want to tell you what it is because that can be considered a spoiler by some people, but it does happen to a certain degree here, and it was just a bit sad to read. I sometimes like to focus on the friendships, and that can give me something else to lean my foot against, but here I could not lean my foot against the friendships because they were so toxic and they were so terrible. In the beginning, his friends spout so much homophobia to his face and so many stereotypes around gay people that it was actually grinding on my nerves the way that he never corrected them. And yes, an apology does come throughout the book, but I don't think the apology equates to a change of accent enough for me to feel satisfied, and I don't think the apology was sincere enough for me to feel like that had been properly discussed. It doesn't discuss it enough, it doesn't unpack it enough, and they were saying some seriously bad things, and it also makes me wonder how had they been friends for this long with the way that this book starts and the way that they treat him at the beginning. It just felt all wrong to me, and just the friendships, I could not get behind them either. And then last but not least, the thing that I struggled the most with is some of the subliminal messaging that gets sent with this book. Because one of the love interests in this is closeted, and Jessie from Bow Ties and Book has been talking about it quite a lot recently, about the way that closeted characters are depicted. And a lot of the times when our main character was picking apart his relationship with the closeted character, he wasn't so much digging into things that he didn't like about the person that he was. It was a lot of, I don't like the way that I have to kind of feel in the closet around this closeted character. I don't like that he doesn't want to show me off. I don't like that we can't do certain things in public. I don't like this, and it was never to do with the character, even though he was acting like it had something to do with the character, and it had to do with the fact that the character was in the closet. And I think it's just, you've got to be thinking about the way that you're representing closeted characters, because they have their reasons and they can come out whenever they want and they can do what is best for them and their mental health and their safety. So it was just the way that that was depicted that didn't sit quite right with me. I'd love to hear own voices on that matter. But yeah, the way the closeted character was treated, I didn't really like. And it does not matter if the character is coming out of the closet or fully in the closet and not planning to come out anytime soon. But that said, our character was like making some small steps. So it just felt like a case of being impatient and spoiled. So that is all I have to say about Only on the Weekends. Needless to say, I was very, very disappointed because I really thought this was going to be a 5-star prediction for me this year, and it absolutely was not. And I talked about it for way too long, but that is how I felt with this one. Moving on to something a bit more positive, I read Volume 2 of Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I read Volume 1 earlier this year, and I really, really had a good time with this continuation of the story. So this is a Persephone and Hades retelling, and it's kind of made the Greek mythology a bit more modern day, a bit more present day set, and it's so much fun. The artwork in this is truly stunning and the colour palette is absolutely gorgeous, and I really liked it in the first graphic novel, and it's once again exceeded my expectations with how beautiful it is to read and experience. And continuing on from the first one, this one focused on and touched on some things that I did not quite expect. I thought it was going to lean more heavily into the romantic aspect. I do think this one focuses a bit more on Persephone and her being a young adult and kind of deciding what she wants to do with her life and who she wants to be. And while there's lots of flirtation happening between her and Hades, I don't think the romantic element is as strong as I thought it was going to be at the end of Volume 1, but that worked for me because I really like Persephone as a main character. I think she's so sweet and humble and lovely, and it was just nice to see her kind of deciding where she wants to go and which avenues she wants to go down. There is an age gap in this romance, and I thought it was going to go unaddressed, but actually the main characters really address it in this book, and they kind of talk about it and discuss it, and it was interesting to see, and I quite liked and appreciated that it does that. But as well as that, there is a bit of a tiny little bit of a love triangle in this. Don't let it scare you away because it's not that intense, but Hades has some choices to make, and the age gap does come into that quite a bit, and I thought all of that was handled quite nicely, and it ended on a place that makes me very, very curious and excited to see where the third volume is going to go. As I've said before, these books really do look at some of the way that women treat women in Greek mythology, and it kind of brings that to the forefront here. And while we do see some drama happening, we also get to see women being supportive of each other in Greek mythology, which is always nice to see. Been enjoying the Olympus series and can't wait to continue. Reading the oldest books on my TBR. I've been doing it steadily, and this month I finished reading The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This was me giving Samantha Shannon a second chance because I read Prior of the Orange Tree and I really, really didn't like it. And for this one, I felt quite mixed and mediocre on it. So in this one, we're following our main character in this fantasy world where magic and different types of gifts exist, and she has a gift that relates to kind of dream walking. I don't really know how to describe it, kind of like dream walking and possessing people's minds. That's kind of her field, and it's unique, and there's never been one like her before. She's the only one, and she works for this crime syndicate, but when she gets captured, she gets taken to this world that she never knew existed before, and there's a whole other level of beings trying to fight against magical creatures, and there's a whole conspiracy going on. It's very complex, so I don't think that summary is doing it justice, but I'm going to try and explain my thoughts and feelings on this book. So first and foremost, I think it's better written than Prior of the Orange Tree in terms of pacing. It's got a much steadier pace to it, a faster pace, and it reads very much like the first fantasy book in a series, which it is, and I quite liked the way it was done. I loved the world building in this. I think lots of people are telling me to be cautious, that she throws you in the deep end, but she does the world building the way that I like it personally, which is where you get into the world and you just gradually get yourself up to speed bit by bit. I thought the world was intriguing. It's very layered. She gradually adds bits and pieces to it, so you get an even more intricate understanding of the world and the magic system and how it all fits together, but also how there's a lot of chaotic energy around and how everything is going to pretty much explode at some point, and all the lines are going to be crossed, okay? And I had a lot of fun discovering and enjoying this world and some of the people that you meet within it. That said, I thought the plot was okay and I was happy enough with the plot. It's very much first book in a series, but it did at the end get quite exciting and had a lot of stakes going on, so I was happy, I was reading, I was tuned in for the world and the plot. Where everything fell flat for me was the characters. I think none of the characters stood out to me. I didn't have a favourite, I didn't feel anything for them. In fact, often I felt incredibly frustrated. Our main character makes decisions at the beginning of this book, not once, not twice, but 3 times that she says she is going to do something and then she does the complete opposite, and I don't understand her. I don't understand why she was saying she was going to do one thing and then doing the opposite. It did not make any sense. So I really got frustrated with our main character because I was like, if you want to do something, just do it. Just stop. So I really struggled with our main character. She really frustrated me to no end. I could not understand her character motivations for literally anything that she did. It confused me to no end. And that aside, we have this love interest and he was such a bad love interest. I just didn't understand why he felt the emotions that he felt either, or what he was getting out of things most of the time. I was just confused, okay? I didn't understand why any of the characters were doing what they were doing. It was all a mess. So in terms of characters, I thought this book was very, very messy, but in terms of world building and plot, I thought it was substantial. So now I don't know where to go. Do I continue with this series? Do I read the sequel? Do I quit while I'm ahead? I am confused. I read Young Mungo by Douglas Stuart. This is a proof copy and this is what the very bold finished copy looks like, and I think this was a beautiful story and a very, very important one to read as well. So it's a very character driven literary style kind of book where we follow young Mungo, and he is this boy who is growing up in Glasgow, so he's Glaswegian, and he discovers that he is gay. He's kind of living in the working class life. He has a mother who drinks and a sister who's trying to get to university but seems to be going about things all the wrong way. They live in a small little flat and they're always broke. His brother is in a gang and he's into the fights between the Protestants and the Catholics, and he's just trying to be happy. He is literally the sweetest, most genuine character. He loves his family as much as they are dysfunctional, as much as they sometimes treat him badly. He still loves them unconditionally and wants the best for them. And it just broke my heart to see how hard he tries in this book and how nice he is to everyone around him, and yet people are just trying to manipulate him and use him, and he's just trying to please as many people as he possibly can. And I think having Mungo as such an endearing main character really worked, because you get to see all of these other characters interacting with him, and while you can see the good in them that he sees, at the same time you can see their external actions and see how what they think might be right for him is absolutely wrong, and it really develops the complexity of those characters throughout the book. It's one of those books that's very, very character driven, but at no point did I feel bored or like the story was stagnant. I could see it was all building towards something, and it does 2 storylines very well, where it flashes back to the past, but then we're also in another timeline where you get to see Mongo on a trip, and you know those timelines are not that far apart and it's just a couple of months and then you're working up to where the timelines intersect. But I think it did a very good job of keeping energy moving throughout the whole story with the way that it used the 2 timelines. As I said earlier in this wrap up, I haven't read that many books about the LGBT+ scene in Scotland, and so this one, which is by the author of Sugar Bane, who won the Booker Prize in 2020, as it says on the proof, handily. It goes to show how important this book was for a lot of Scottish readers and for Scotland in general, and also for the gay community within Scotland. So just reading Mungo and seeing this beautiful, although harrowing story at points, and just getting to experience it and learn through it, but also get to appreciate it, I really enjoyed it. It's written incredibly well. I will say that the dialogue is written with the Glaswegian accent on it, so if you struggle with reading dialects, then maybe this could be a good one for you to audiobook instead. But yeah, definitely recommend Young Mungo, and all the more excited to get to Sugar Bane, which is waiting for me on my shelves. In a single morning, because this one is so short, I read Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. This is a non-fiction memoir book, but it's also kind of a book that lists reasons why it's worth staying alive. So this book is basically Matt Haig's experience with suicidal thoughts, depression and anxiety, and his particular brand of depression is very much led by anxiety. So if that is something that's going to trigger you while reading, then take caution approaching this book. But I know several people who this book has really helped when they were in a tough and difficult time, and that's why I wanted to read it for myself, to kind of see what was helpful for them and what gave them reasons to keep on going. And what I liked about this book is that it doesn't at any point in time feel preachy. Yes, it's giving reasons to stay alive, but while it's doing that, it also feels incredibly personal to Matt Haig, and he's more so listing reasons that he gave himself to stay alive, which might be able to help other people too. And at the same time, it's got memoir chapters where he's just talking about his experience with depression and his experience with depression and anxiety and how he moved himself through it or didn't manage to move himself through it, and what other people did to help him through it as well. And I just really appreciated this. And while I was reading it, I was also keeping in mind the time in which this was published, because now there are several more books that have to deal with male mental health, but at the time when this was published, I feel like they were few and far between, or fewer and lesser between than they are now. So I know that this one was really groundbreaking in helping a lot of people, and I can exactly see why after reading it. So at the very start of the month, I was part of the Bronte along discussion for the Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Bronte, and this one is about a woman who arrives at Wildfell Hall, and she's got her son with her, and she's very mysterious and nobody knows why she's suddenly turned up there and why she came there. And we follow our main character who wants to know her past and wants to know her history, and that's what this book is about. I had very mixed feelings on this book. I did not particularly enjoy my reading experience, but I can see how this book is incredibly relevant and incredibly important back in its time, but still in the present day time now. So let me talk about what I liked about it, and that really has to do with the message and the overall themes in this book. It's a very feminist kind of story about a woman who takes control of her own life and continues to do so in different ways. And I appreciated seeing that, even though sometimes it made for a difficult read. But I did really appreciate seeing that in a classic book, especially as this one was written in a time where women were not doing the things that our main female lead is doing in this book. So for the time it was quite revolutionary, and the prologue to this, where Bronte herself has written a letter saying that she stands by what she's written and there's reasons why she's written it, was so incredibly a powerful way to start reading this book, because everything she said I wanted to, preach. She was really talking and saying very relevant things. But yeah, we're following this woman doing things that at her time was quite revolutionary, and yet unfortunately still today it's quite a revolutionary thing to be able to do. So I really admire this message that the book gets across and this story that this book gets across, and all of the depictions of women in this, absolutely fantastic, loved it. But that said, I didn't have a good time with the reading experience, and that is for, I think, 3 separate reasons. First of all, the perspective that this is told from is not from the Tenant of Wildfell Halls, it's from a male main character, and I just did not like this character. We are supposed to be rooting for him at some points, and I was never rooting for him because I felt like he was troublesome and a bit problematic and really aggravating. So even though I was supposed to be rooting for the person who's narrating the story, I absolutely wasn't, and that definitely gave me some distance from the text. I also think that I struggle with books that are told entirely in flashbacks, where you know what the outcome is going to be, because for me that just kills all suspense. And I'm not saying you need suspense, but it makes the whole book incredibly predictable. I know where this character is going to end, and now I'm in a flashback scene, and that flashback is going to last 300 pages, and I know exactly where we're going to get to at the end of these 300 pages. So anything that's happening throughout these pages kind of loses some agency to me, and that's where this book lost me the most, because it killed that agency. This is a 500-page plus book, and a lot of it is flashback, and I just knew the outcome. And talking on the discussion, it was interesting because some of them mentioned that they appreciated that they knew the outcome, because what they're going through at the time throughout the flashback is just so stressful. It's good to know what the outcome is. And while that works for some people, it just didn't work for me. So that's just personal preference, I suppose. But that's where this book lost me the most. And then the last thing is that we do have this female lead who I admired for what she was doing and everything, but sometimes she did feel a bit, you know, self-righteous to me, a bit too much for my liking. But that was the most minor negative comment that I can say about this book, because I would have still kept reading it and it didn't bother me that much. It was just something I noticed. So yeah, all in all, a very mixed dive into Anne Bronte's works. I appreciate the theme, I appreciate the message, but the execution was where this book really lost me. I went on holiday in July and I went back home to the Netherlands, and there's nothing more homely to me than reading an Anne of Green Gables book. So I read Anne of Avonlea, which is the second book in the Anne of Green Gables series by L.M. Montgomery. I read the first one in December when I was at home, so it was nice to just read the next one while at home. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, Anne of Green Gables books are the lowest stakes possible. They are good vibes only, and they make me so very happy, because while there are sometimes some troublesome things happening, it's nothing too serious, it's nothing that's going to be end of the world drama, which means you can just relax into the story, appreciate seeing Anne make some silly mistakes and have a good time. I was worried that where things ended by the end of the first book, that the second one meant Anne was going to have less creative imagination and get into less silly situations, but no, don't worry, she still manages to make a mess of things and for things to be fun, and she still has a wild and vast imagination, even if, you know, you can see that she's aged up in this book and she's growing up and things have changed in her life. There's also a few more hints towards what could possibly be a romantic thing, which I really liked, and I liked seeing it kind of lead up to it. Friends to lovers is basically my favourite romance trope, and there is friends to lovers written all over this book series in general. I rewatched the Anne of Green Gables that I grew up with my mum while I was there. It was a great time. I haven't put the vlog up as of this video, but I do have a vlog where I eat donuts and I read Don't Fall in Love by Jackie Lau, which is an adult romance book, and I had a lot of fun with this book. I really liked it. It's one of the sweetest, no pun intended, romances I've read in a very long time. In this one we're following Ryan Kwok, who is a film star, and he is going to be entering a baking competition. He goes into a bakery and spills over a bunch of donuts and has the brilliant idea that in preparation for the baking competition he should ask the baker at this bakery to show him the ropes, and that is how this one starts, and it is so genuinely sweet. So what I really like about this romance book that kind of sets it apart from other romance books to me is that the timeline for this feels incredibly believable. We see them do everyday things like go on dates, and the way that people tend to date in real life, where it's like one date a week rather than spending so much time with someone. So this book spans months, and you get to see them building a relationship with each other and talking to each other and getting to know each other. And sometimes Ryan is just the sweetest. In my mid-year freak out tag I said he was not book boyfriend material, but I definitely retract that statement and say that he absolutely is, because he's so sweet. It's got one of my favorite tropes in it, which is celebrity ex-normal person romance. So I really liked seeing the ways in which they had to deal with that aspect of him being a celebrity and she just being a baker and wanting to continue pursuing her own career and running her bakery the way that she does. This one also has this thread line of grief going through it. Ryan's just lost his mother and his family feels like it's falling apart without the glue, their mother holding them all together. And our main female lead had experienced parental loss many years ago, so they kind of talked their way through that, and there's themes of grief in this, there's themes of family, you get to see some lovely friendships, you get to hear about mouth-watering donuts and cakes. Please, if you're going to read this book, have some snacks with you, because I just wanted to eat the pages at some points. But yeah, it was a very sweet, very wholesome romance. There are some steamy scenes, but I will say that the spice level in this one is quite low. So if you're just breaking into the romance genre and if you just want to try something with a little bit of spice but not too much, then this is where I'd recommend you start. I cannot wait for the sequel. I know it's going to be following two characters that we get to meet in this one, and I'm very much looking forward to it. While I was at home, I did some rereading. I reread How to Bang a Billionaire by Alexis Hall and also How to Blow It with a Billionaire by Alexis Hall. And these are the first two books in Alexis Hall's Billionaire romance series. If you've been on my channel for a long time, you will know that I know these books inside and out because I've reread them countless and numerous times. But if you're not new, it's actually been a little bit of a time since I reread it because I was trying to forget what happens a little bit so I can enjoy it on my next read. And so I really did enjoy it on my next read. So Alexis Hall is my favourite romance author, and in this book we follow Arden St. Ives, who just finished university at Oxford. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life and where he wants to go to next, but through trying to gather sponsors for the university for a little work thing that he does, he ends up phoning Caspian Hart, who is a billionaire, and the conversation they have at the phone really just jumpstarts a relationship which turns into a bit of a billionaire, steamy BDSM romance book that is absolutely brilliant. I think Alexis Hall is one of my favourites because of his writing style. It's absolutely lyrical and beautiful and gorgeous. The writing that would win the Booker Prize, for example, but it's in a romance book, and I really just appreciate seeing that. You will get references in these books for everybody. He will at some point be referencing the classics like Alice in Wonderland and Samuel Beckett, but then he'll go to talking about The Little Mermaid and Star Wars, and there is no in between. He just meshes with all of these brilliant references, and it's nice, but it's not too overwhelming either. It's just the perfect balance. Arden is a sweetheart character who comes across as very innocent and silly and playful, but at the same time you can tell that he's brimming with intelligence and emotion and passion for what he wants to do once he starts thinking about it. And Caspian is this absolutely clueless in terms of emotions, but absolutely brutal in terms of the economical lifestyle kind of billionaire, and I think he's an absolute sweetheart. He is the definition of trying his best, and I love to see it. The steamy scenes are so steamy, it's off the charts. As they say in Hercules, it is so hot it makes steam look cool, okay? That is the level of steam you get here, and it is BDSM, so be aware of that. You've got secondary characters, you've got a really, really nice friendship that is there. Arden is a pansexual main character, and then Caspian is a gay main character, so you've got that representation. It's really just one of the best romance series I've ever read, and I had such a good time. I don't know what more I can say other than more people need to read this series, and I will not be reviewing and rereading the third book anytime soon because unfortunately I didn't love that one as much. It's brimming with things that I don't really like to read about, so I like to pretend it doesn't exist, but don't let that deter you from trying out and starting this absolutely top-notch fantastic romance series that made me incredibly happy and had me not able to sleep, eat, function or do anything for the days that I reread those two books. Moving on, I'm going to be telling you about Hearts and Bones by Niamh Mulvey, which is a short story collection which is love songs for late youth. So in this one, you're just following short stories that have to do with love and romance and the ways in which it goes wrong and the ways in which it goes right. It can be in terms of a partner, it can be in terms of a family member, and I don't actually have very strong opinions on this short story collection. I thought it was just okay. Oh, this is the proof copy and this is what the beautiful finished cover looks like. But yeah, I did think that this was just an okay collection. There was no particular short story that stood out to me, and there was nothing particularly amazing about the writing as well. I think with short stories, it's just so important to have a writing style that resonates with you or stands out as different, or something about the short stories that are really unique because they're very short, you've not got much time to really bring your point across, but by having a unique or beautiful atmosphere or writing style, it can bring the collection together as a whole to the forefront of someone's mind, and it just never quite did that for me. I raced through it because it was quite easy reading, but yeah, nothing really stood out. I just liked seeing these depictions of love, the ways in which it was messy, the ways in which it was not as messy and worked out. It was good, but truly it's not one I'm going to remember in a very, very long time. We have Learwife by J.R. Thorp. So I was very excited for this book, and unfortunately it let me down. This is why I had to reread Alexis Hall, because a lot of the books I was very excited for just weren't really hitting it for me this month. So this one is a spin-off of King Lear, which is a play by Shakespeare, been on this channel a while, hi, I'm Olivia Savannah. I'm an absolute Shakespeare stan. I love his plays, I've read them all, and King Lear is actually one of my favourite plays. I have many favourite plays, but it's one of my favourite plays. So when I heard that this was a book all about Queen Lear, who does not appear in the play whatsoever, and kind of unpicking where she is, what happened to her, why she was so absent, and how she feels at the end of the play when she hears about the events that have happened, I was fascinated. I was really looking forward to it. But unfortunately, this one just was a bit boring to me. It was very, very slow paced. Not much was moving or happening in this book. In fact, for the first third of the book, Queen Lear spends a lot of time talking about how she's going to do a certain something and then never proceeds to do that thing. And what was it with me reading about characters who say they are going to do one thing and then do the exact opposite? I was getting incredibly frustrated. But if I put that to the side, it was just such a slow-paced, moving story that it took too long to get to where it needed to get for things to be exciting, and when it did get there, I just did not find it all that exciting and endearing. And when a book is this slow-paced and this steady on, I don't particularly mind it if the characters are intriguing and keeping my interest, but unfortunately I don't think the characters here very much gave me anything. Would have wanted this to be a bit more feminist feeling than it was, particularly for the fact that it's all about Queen Lear. For something that's supposed to be all about her, she spends an awful lot of her time thinking back to or talking about the men in her life and less of what she herself is doing. And rather than it kind of showing a story of girls being united and girls, you know, standing up for themselves, it seemed to show a story of a lot of girl-on-girl hate, and even the main driving plots of this book are spurred on the fact that girls have to compete against each other. And so it just really didn't give me any of the things that I was looking for in a story all about Queen Lear. Last but not least, I read The Oracle Code by Marieke and Nijkamp and also Manuel Preitano. So this is based on Barbara Gordon from the DC Comics. And if you don't know who Barbara is, she's also known as Batwoman, but also later known as Oracle, because something happens to Barbara which leads her to become Oracle and change her identity a bit. And what happens in the comics is slightly changed here because it makes her a teenager. So this is following Barbara as a teenager, where the events that lead her to transition from Batwoman to Oracle happen in her teen years. So basically what happens is Barbara is in an accident and she becomes a wheelchair user and she becomes disabled, and she's sent to an estate to help her on with her recovery process and into accepting her disability and being able to move around and be as comfortable as she can be with her disability. But when she gets there, she realizes that not everything is quite right with this place where she's staying. And what I really liked about this book was mostly the disability representation. I think it did a very good job with the wheelchair representation. Personally, I'm not a wheelchair user, so I'm not an Own Voices reviewer for that. I was talking about this with my sister Simone, who has read part of this comic herself, and she herself is a wheelchair user, and I was her carer for quite a few years of her life. So in terms of between us, we determined that the wheelchair representation was really accurate and really, really well done. And it was quite nice to see this setting and see her go through some of the emotional journey that you need to go through when you are suddenly disabled and your whole life has changed a little bit. And it was really nice to see. I do think the artwork is not my favourite, but it tends to be the kind of artwork that you see in comics, which is not all about the beautiful artistic choices, but more so just about, you know, getting the story across. So it served its purpose there. And also, I do think the mystery element of what was going on behind this estate was a bit lacking. It was fine. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't disappointing. It was just a storyline that wrapped up quite quickly, but it was there so that this book had a plot, when really I was quite happy with it not having a plot, just because I was here for the character development and the representation. And it gave me those two things. So do be aware going into this one that the plot is not the most mind-blowing thing ever, but it's a very good book if you wanted to read a graphic novel that has wheelchair representation and lots of other disability representation in there as well. And there you have it. Those are the 13 books that I read in the month of July. So please let me know in the comment section down below what was the last book that you read and enjoyed. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!